rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective with me. All right, so I want to go really quick. Well, wait a minute. It looks like he's done. Okay. I was going to take a quick peek at what Donald Trump was finishing up and talking about in the Bronx. We can go and take a look while I talk here. Let's see if it's going to come up here. Yeah. So here he is. He just finished up his remarks. They're kind of like taking care of business, I guess. He just walked off the stage. There was yeah, there you go. He's throwing out some hats. You just can't see it behind the sign that's right above my head. He's right there. But anyway, I tried to listen to everything. I didn't quite get to all of it, but there was a pause. He had a pause because apparently it's pretty hot up there. And there was a lady who fell out due to the heat. And so he stopped his speech, called for doctors, and waited until the doctors got a chance to go and take a look and go ahead and get her, taken care of and everything else. Because, believe it or not, that's the kind of guy he is. He does things that way. Now, Biden probably wouldn't have even noticed that somebody had fallen out, but he went ahead and took care of her, got her taken care of, and he just finished up his remarks. He talked a lot about what he has done for New York. And keep in mind, this is in the Bronx. This is in the Bronx area, and I think it's like down the street from AOC's office or something like that. And he essentially did what he normally does. He talked about all the good things that he had done. He talked a little bit about how New York is today with the broken subway system, and in terms of like tiles falling from the top. I guess people getting pushed into the rails, the crime, all of those things. He talked about the good things he did for New York, like the ice rink that he assisted in building. That was a great success for him, and taking care of New York and stuff. And so, yeah, it's they estimated something around 30 to 35,000 that were at the facility. He was saying that there was something around the lines of like 6,000 that were still waiting to get in. But as you can see, even though the left kind of posted photos and stuff of the rally and trying to say that there were no black people at the rally, there are different nationalities here. There are just definitely different ethnicities. They are essentially there's just all kinds. There were Teamsters there. There were, other people there. I mean, it's basically, when you consider the fact that this is supposed to be, deep blue New York, I don't think New York is deep blue anymore. I won't go so far as to say that it's, possibly turning red, but it's definitely turning into a shade of purple, I think, due to Democrat policies and Democrats and the illegals and all of that other stuff. And so, yeah, that's just, let's just say that it's a bit of a mess, realistically, on them. So it was, I think it was a good speech. I tend to not listen to his speeches because I have a hard time with people who get off topic so quick. And he tends to do that a lot. And so it's just for me. It's difficult to follow sometimes. And so I tend to not listen. I tend to listen to like the highlights and the the sound bites and that kind of stuff. I don't usually listen to his speeches full through. This one I kind of got about 3/4 of the way through, and then I had to go and get ready for work here, this work. So anyway, good turnout for him in the Bronx. Great signs that things are definitely changing. And yeah, it's just one of those great things that's going on. And just to carry on with the spirit of this, let's go ahead and start the show with, of course, the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to be saying it tonight, so you get to listen to me. Pronounce, announce, whatever kind of ounces of the Pledge of Allegiance for tonight. So please, if you are of mind, please stand, remove your hats, put your hand over your heart, and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I actually would appreciate it if you would get your pledges sent in, record yourself saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and then send that audio file to me at fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online to submit your Pledge of Allegiance to the show, and I'll get it in the rotation, because I know that you guys, I know you come to see me, but you know, I mean, I gotta give something back to you guys. So come on, you send in your pledges, and we'll go ahead and get them into the rotation. All right. So tonight, we're going to talk about these fantastic shirts. As you can see, I'm wearing the Liberty Bell, We the People shirt. You can see it on the wrong shoulder, on the shoulder here. The Liberty Bell, We the People version. I like the cotton polos. That's what I wear on this show. Every single broadcast is one of their shirts. And right now, let me do a quick check real quick. I'm going to go to the flag shirt. That's kind of hard to say it at the same time as as you're doing it. Theflagshirt.com. Go to theflagshirt.com and you can see, yep, their Memorial Day sale is still going on, where you can put in promo code MEM15. That's MEM15 to get $15 off if you spend $75 on an order there in honor of Memorial Day, which is coming up Monday. Or if you don't want to spend $75, what you can do is you can head off to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. That's flagshirt.americanperspective.online and get yourself a coupon code for $5 off your order. So you have a choice. You can either use the MEM15 if you spend over $75, or you can use flagshirt.americanperspective.online to get yourself a $5 code to get $5 off your order. Either way, doesn't make a difference. You can go ahead and do that. They have some great styles, patriotic styles, of course, for men, women, kids, as well as a bunch of accessories. You know, Independence Day is coming up. You may want to grab yourself a wonderful shirt, hat, glasses. You might want to do like an Independence Day party, and you have American-themed sunglasses for your site. So do yourself a favor, run off to theflagshirt.com. That's theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized for that wonderful celebration of our Independence Day. Okay. So the first thing, obviously, is that the Bronx residents were absolutely excited for Trump to go there. Again, I've pointed out on multiple occasions, I think not only is the lawfare, the whole lawfare and the trials kind of backfiring on these folks, on the Democrats, but they also don't seem to understand that Donald Trump's resilient and he's smart. He knows how to market himself. He's been doing that all his life, and so he knows how to market. And he's like, hey, you know what? If you're going to stop me from going all over the country, well, I'll just do stops right here as far as I can get, and still be back in court the next day, which is essentially what he's done. He had that massive rally in New Jersey, and now he's done the Bronx. He's done, places in Harlem. He's had spontaneous visits there. It's just, he's running what I would consider a very, very controlled and comprehensive campaign. And I'll be honest with you, if he can keep this going, I think we're looking at a potential, big, huge, humongous victory in November if he can just keep himself together. And it's not like it's all that hard. I mean, honestly, all he has to do is just like point to Joe Biden and just say he's bad, and that pretty much will do it. I mean, it's better off that he does that than, shows off a different Trump, mean Trump, angry Trump kind of thing. But still, the point being is that he's doing his campaign a little bit smarter this time, I think. And it's paying off. It's definitely paying off in the polls. Now, something that developed in Ohio, and this is kind of interesting. I've actually seen a couple of headlines that have talked about Biden having some issues getting on some ballots. And most of the time it's just like, hey, Biden may miss this deadline. Biden may miss this other deadline, and may not be on the ballot. And then all of a sudden, the headline disappears. There's nothing there to it or whatever, so on and so forth. Well, this one might actually stick. Sadly, Red State reports that Biden is actually off the Ohio general election ballot after the state legislature tells him to pound sand. Now, keep in mind, this isn't 100% in the books, okay? And this is not, unlike what the left has been yelling about all day when this came out, this is not like what happened with Trump in Colorado and Maine, okay? What's actually happened here is there has been a law on the books in Ohio since 2010, that requires candidates to be declared prior to a certain date. And the date that they've picked is August 7th. Now, the problem here is that the DNC, their primary announcement or their official announcement of their candidate isn't until August 22nd. And so what's been happening, or what has happened essentially, is that the DNC has failed to declare him as their candidate, and they have absolutely no intention, apparently, to declare him as a candidate in time, because their national convention hasn't occurred yet. Now, the president and his party have been pushing the Ohio legislature to pass a fix that would allow him to make the deadline. But on Wednesday, the Republican-led legislature justifiably told him to pound sand. And so this fix is not going to happen through the legislature, according to Ohio House Speaker Jason Stevens. And Ohio House Minority Leader Allison Russo, who is a Democrat, they talked about it at different the paper calls them gaggles, but let's say they're press conferences, okay? So Stevens basically said there's just not the will to do it, or to do that from the legislature. And then Russo also said that she was skeptical that the fix was ever going to happen in the legislature. Now, she complained about dysfunction, and she complained that, this is, that group, I guess, has had a hard time not, trying to put aside partisanship and all this other crap. But the fact of the matter is that the state the state law in Ohio and scheduling the close of its nominating convention on August 22nd, they knew about this ahead of time, and there's literally no reason why they should have missed this. But not that it really matters much anyway, because Biden was never going to be competitive in Ohio, they said. So even though he may not make the ballot. The problem's not so much that he isn't going to make the ballot, because they've probably, they're pretty much in a foregone conclusion now. Ohio's going to go for the Republicans in the general election, so who cares? Well, the problem is that you have Democrats who are in that state who are attempting to gain state positions. You have the state, Senate. You have the federal, the Senate. You have the House of Representatives. You have candidates that are down ballot. That's what they call them, that are potentially going to be harmed because of this. Now, don't be surprised if there's some sort of a lawsuit that comes out because of this. But the reality of it is that, don't know for sure if it's actually going to happen, if there's going to be a fix. But it's just kind of interesting that it did occur, and that this sort of scenario even exists in today's day and age. But hey, you know what? If it doesn't happen and he ends up not on the ballot for Ohio, well, that's the DNC's fault, honestly. Just like everything else in this particular race, that's the DNC's fault. So he missed the deadline. He blew it. That's what Buddy says, of course, in Rumble. He missed the deadline. He blew it. Yep, pretty much. He missed it because there was some sort of a filing. You have to do it like 90 days. You have to file 90 days before the August 7th deadline. And I think that was today, was the 90th day or something like that. But anyway, whatever. It's going to be kind of interesting. Of course, this year just is going to be upside down with all kinds of stuff that's going on. All right. Well, let's just pull this out. Reuters, not a right-wing organization, more of a left-wing propaganda outlet, although they're not quite as left as places like Politico and so on and so forth. They pointed out that there is a Ipsos Reuters poll that shows that Biden's approval rating has actually fallen to its lowest level in nearly 2 years. Oh, wait a minute. I would have thought that it would have been even lower than that, but I guess at one point he was lower. Don't ask me why. But anyway, the 4-day poll, which closed on Monday, showed that just 36% of Americans approve of Biden's job performance as president. And that, of course, is down from 38% in April. It was a return to the lowest approval rating of his presidency, which was last seen in July of 2022. The article here says that while this month's drop was within the poll's 3 percentage point margin of error, it still could bode poorly for Biden as he faces off against, of course, Republican Donald Trump in the November 5th presidential election. Now, the thing about it is that I think a lot of people don't seem to understand is that neither one of these candidates, whether you're talking about Biden or Trump, neither one has really been officially named yet for their respective parties. We're still waiting on time for their national conventions and committees and all of that other stuff to tie it back together. So, Donald Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee, and Biden is the presumptive Democrat nominee. But we'll see. There's some things that still need to be tied up with that. So anyway, that's just one of the things. Well, Biden's campaign is trying to revitalize his poll numbers and his attractiveness, let's say, in the younger category. By younger, I mean young people. This came in the post-millennial Biden campaign to hire a meme manager. They're hiring a person to make up Dark Brandon memes and things like that. Oh, they're trying to help win voters who are terminally online. Oh, you mean you're trying to help win voters that are like me, who work on a computer all day and then do this at night? Sure. Anyway, so it says the ideal candidate for this role is passionate about bringing political content to voters where they already are on the internet. And so they're looking to come up with a bunch of memes. They're looking for somebody. Hey, go ahead and anybody with any kind of artistic skills that can do memes or whatever. Why don't you go ahead and apply for the position? It's a job posting that was apparently issued on May 20th for the campaign, and it states, in this role, you will initiate and manage day-to-day operations in engaging the internet's top content and meme pages. The ideal candidate for this role is passionate about bringing political content to voters where they already are on the internet. Yeah, here's a bit of a description of the job. But it says key responsibilities are to cultivate and manage relationships with top digital media companies, podcasters, and meme pages across a number of social media platforms. I wonder if I qualify for that. But anyway, work independently with external partners to identify and land engagement opportunities and manage them from beginning to end. And then, of course, engage internal teams and cross-functional partners to foster innovative ideas. They are trying to revitalize the geriatric oatmeal brains campaign, I guess, through the digital space. Now, the campaign is also engaged with TikTok videos on the platform to try and woo younger Americans for support. So I have a question, because there's a couple of people. There's like this Harry Sisson and God, I can't think of his other buddy, Chris Mowry. There it is. Harry Sisson and Chris Mowry, who were young, like 18, 19, 20-year-olds that have been posting all over the freaking internet, and especially on X. They've been all over. They've done, TikTok videos. They've done, X posts, so on and so forth, that were like just salivating over Biden, which that just sounds sick. But anyway, I'm kind of surprised that neither one of those two has jumped on the bandwagon to try and get this job for it. And so if you recall, in 2021 and 2022, the White House brought in TikTok influencers to disseminate their messaging on the COVID vaccine mandates, which is where all this crap started. And then, of course, they expanded that to the Ukraine war. And I guess left-wing mega donor George Soros has funded many of the pro-Biden activists. Yeah. And this is an example. The Biden-Harris HQ name on frickin' X is one of those paid scenarios. So the reason why is because of the fact that for an example, a recent CBS YouGov poll in May showed that Biden's approval rating had dropped 12 points with young voters aged 18 to 29 over the previous 2 months. And some of the polls have even shown Trump having an edge over Biden in younger vote category. So anyway, it is what it is. All right, so let's take a quick shift and head on over to Gaza. Let's talk about Gaza really quick here before I get too far going on. So you know that wonderful 300 and some odd million, billion, trillion, whatever dollar bridge, ramp, floating pier that they were going to make to help facilitate humanitarian aid. And don't get me wrong, I'm not laughing about the humanitarian aid part, but the humanitarian aid to get it into Gaza. Well, apparently, according to Major General, let me find him. Yeah, Major General Pat Ryder. stated on Tuesday, and he's a Pentagon spokesman, by the way, stated on Tuesday that none, yes, I said that again, none of the 569 tons of humanitarian aid that has been sent to Gaza in just the last week alone, for the Palestinians has actually reached them. None of it. It's all been stolen. Yeah, Ryder explained that the way that aid distribution is set up is that the military delivers it via the floating pier that was built by, of course, said military. From there, non-U.S. contractors transport it to an assembly area where various non-governmental organizations take it for distribution. And apparently what happens is this stuff tries to get to the warehouse, and it doesn't actually make it to the warehouse. As an example, recently, of the 16 trucks that were bringing food and medicine into those warehouses, or into one of the warehouses in Gaza, only 5 actually made it to the warehouse intact. Supplies from the other 11 were completely stolen as trucks traveled through areas that had not seen much aid. According to a UN official, the Palestinians have not seen trucks in a while, and so they just basically mounted onto the trucks and helped themselves to some of the food parcels. What's even worse, though, is that the UN also has people, because the UN has folks that are not exactly the most honest, and that some of the UN employees are actually stealing it and reselling it for themselves. Yeah. You know, the thing about it is, and I've already kind of talked about this a couple of times, this Gazan refugee aid, the only way that you're actually going to get it into the hands of this civilian Palestinian population is to guard it, to send it in with military support and trucks and guns and things like that. That's the only way you're going to have it make its way properly to the right people. It's just not going to happen. But of course, they're all trying to blame Israel for this. And by the way, that pier, $320 million was what the price tag on it. Here's a photograph, an overhead photograph of the damn thing. It's a complete floating pier. You can see it here. And it's just sitting on top of the water. I guess the ships pull in, as close as they can get to the shore, and then unload. And then the trucks, then they take that and they put it up toward the top there by the road, or they load the trucks up right above my head here in the photograph. If you're listening on the audio portion of the program, I highly encourage you to go over to rumble.com and check out the video. But there it is. That's our $320 million floating freaking dock. Yeah. Anyway. What a mess. What a mess. Complete, utter mess. All right. I want to take a second. Take a second, and I got to ask a question. It was one of the shows, or one of the podcasts that I was watching today. I can't remember exactly which one. I think it might have been Sean Parnell's Battleground Live. But he brought up a very good point and a good question, and I actually, I never really considered this. But if you think about it, all of the social media and even some of the mainstream media have been harping on this thing about Sam Alito's upside down U.S. flag. And now they've apparently uncovered another photo of their house, of Alito's home, that has a different flag that, of course, the mainstream media is applying to the movement that they are calling the insurrection that was part of the rally on January 6th. And it's a flag, a very simple flag. It's a white flag with a tree, or a depiction of a tree. And then on the top has the words "Appeal to Heaven" on it. And of course, the left, being the uneducated, at least on this topic, irritating morons that they are, they say that this flag is a representation of the elitos being sympathetic and supportive of the Stop the Steal rally and the ultimate insurrection. Now, they've made this same claim about Ginny Thomas, and they've made this same claim, with regards to the idea that there is some sort of a support. Now, Ginny Thomas did have some interactions when it came to the January 6th rally, but there's nothing. Well, I mean, first of all, as I've pointed out on this program multiple times, January 6th was not an insurrection. There just wasn't an insurrection there. It's never been proven. Nobody's been charged. It's over and done with. Quit harping on that horse, you liberal lunatics. But the fact of the matter is that this flag and the upside down flag before it, apparently, according to the left, is grounds for not just recusal of Sam Alito from any of the cases that involve Trump, but also apparently this is enough for him flying a flag, that this is enough to call for his complete dismissal and ultimate impeachment. And then the Democrat senators and congresspeople are calling for a code of ethics that the Congress is going to find a way to enact on the Supreme Court justices. And this is what they are trying to do. Now, here's the thing. And let me just point this out. Because first of all, yes, okay, the flag, "Appeal to Heaven," was flown. There were a couple of instances that were flown that you can see at the Capitol building on January 6th. But let me give you a little bit of the history, a very tiny amount of the history. Tiny amount of history here for this flag. And what this flag is, so here, let me show you. It's this one that's up at the top there. It's this guy right here in the middle of the screen. What this flag actually is it was created by Washington's secretary. And Washington's secretary created it so George Washington could use it on a squadron of 6 schooners, meaning ships, that he outfitted out of his own expense in the fall of 1775 as part of the American Revolution. And this flag was a popular symbol. The pine tree that's on this flag was a popular symbol for the American independence. The pine tree flags were used in New England and Massachusetts colonies from 1686 to 1778. In fact, there's another rendition that doesn't have "Appeal to Heaven" on it, but there's another rendition about the Massachusetts Navy ensign. And it's one of the few states, one of 3, actually, that has its own naval ensign. The others being, of course, South Carolina and Maine. In 1776, the Massachusetts Navy adopted as its flag a white field charged with a green pine tree. So this flag that was flown, that these leftist, I don't like using the term liberal because liberal kind of leans toward libertarian, which would be more freedom oriented, and that's not what leftists are. They're not orientated toward freedom. They are orientated toward totalitarianism. But anyway, I digress. This flag that they claim is a co-opting for the Stop the Steal is actually a historical flag. And I personally am looking for, and I'm probably going to eventually purchase, the original Betsy Ross flag. So they are attempting to assume and correlate this flag, the Appeal to Heaven flag, and the upside down U.S. flag, which, by the way, again, pointing it out, that's not illegal to fly it upside down. In fact, it is used as a sign of distress and emergency and danger. It's not illegal. Neither one of these flags are illegal to fly. Neither one of these flags have any kind of semblance of order or connection to anything other than American history and American patriotism. And his wife is the one that's reported to have run the flag, the upside down U.S. flag anyway. But it got me to thinking. So because again, they've ramped up their attacks on Clarence Thomas, and now they've ramped up their attacks on Sam Alito. And it didn't really quite click to me until it was mentioned, as I said, on one of the podcasts that I listened to, or one of the shows that I listened to, that we still have two Supreme Court cases that are being potentially heard and possibly decided by June. Now, I took a look at the Supreme Court website. I took a look at the SCOTUS blog website, and I wanted to see if maybe there was some sort of an indication as to when these decisions, and again, keep in mind that the two decisions that are the most important are the one where the U.S. flag, not the U.S. flag, but the one where the immunity case, where Donald Trump has immunity or asked for full immunity, and the other one where the January 6ers have been charged and convicted under a law for obstruction of an official proceeding, which was never designed to be utilized that way. And the connection between the two coming out in June and the connection that was being made with SCOTUS is the whole idea. Is there a possible person inside of SCOTUS that is leaking information? We already had the Dobbs decision get leaked last year. Is there potentially a insider information stream that is such for the SCOTUS? And is it possible that the reason why these attacks are being ramped up is because of the fact that those two cases, which are going to be decided sometime in the near future, are potentially not going the Democrats' way? And that this is why Alito and Thomas are being attacked and being dragged through the mud? Is this the kind of pressure that the left is trying to bear on these two gentlemen to maybe make them think that maybe they shouldn't vote the way that they are trying to vote? And obviously, they are potentially giving advice and counsel in that, in terms of their discussions, to the younger justices on the court. So is it potentially possible that we could be looking at something like a 5-4, 6-3 type of decision set in terms of the discussions that they're dealing with? Because you know that they have discussions. They talk about these things. They have to. It's not that each one comes up with their own opinions and they all get together and say, okay, now let's, focus on this. It's usually they all get together, they confer, they discuss, they research, and they would eventually present their opinions. Now, they do write sometimes dissenting opinions or concurrent opinions, depending upon which way, and each justice who may not quite agree with the majority opinion, they can write their own little brief on it and say, well, I agree with this person, or I don't agree with this at all. That's why we get those dissenting opinions and those concurrent opinions. But is this some kind of a way to sort of put pressure on SCOTUS to mar them and to drag them through the mud in the mainstream media? Is that potentially what the left is attempting to do? And could it be because of a leak? I mean, they've been going after Clarence Thomas for quite some time. And keep in mind that Clarence Thomas brought up a couple of good points, especially in the immunity case, where he made the suggestion that Jack Smith could have been appointed unconstitutionally. As I pointed out on this program, could that have been picked up by the left, and the left had been like, whoa, yeah, we need to shut this thing down quick, because that would actually kill the cases that essentially Donald Trump would be potentially, or at least thought about, not being able to be voted in as president. Could this potentially be that kind of a situation? I mean, we already had the Dobbs leak, and the Dobbs leak, essentially the Dobbs decision leak, was essentially the first foray into the idea that there is potentially an individual who is inside the court, and they haven't even found him yet. In fact, their investigations have come up with exactly bupkis in terms of who that person might be. Could we also be looking at that too? And by the way, that the left is also potentially looking at this and trying to utilize this as a way to expand the justices on the court, to expand the court and get what they need, get what they want. If they can prove to enough people where Congress can act and expand the court, because remember, Congress does have that ability. They've expanded the court in the past. They've also shrunk the court in the past to where it is today in terms of 9 justices. Because Congress can make that decision, and believe me, they are really pushing for that. Now, Congress can't necessarily make, because of constitutionality, they can't necessarily make an ethics thing. They can't make term limits. They can't do any of that unless they change the Constitution in some way. But they do have the power of impeachment, and they do have the power to nominate, or to basically decide how many justices are going to be on the court, because Article 3 was the last article written on the Constitution, the last one that was implemented. And those boys, let's just say, when they were in that convention for 110 days, they finally said, hey, we have enough. We're just going to throw this little thing in at the end about the courts. And that's the one thing that they unfortunately didn't flesh out very well. And it allowed the First Continental Congress to make all the choices, which has put us somewhat in these positions. But I want you to think about that for a little bit. That's kind of an interesting and intriguing question as to whether or not this whole pressure on all of this is designed to influence the SCOTUS to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be going the direction that you're going on that immunity case or that obstruction case, because both of those cases are directly aligned with Donald Trump. All right. Now, let's on toward that end, because we were talking about flags. Mark asked this question in the chat on Facebook, and he says, is the U.S. flag allowed to be used for a shirt? So here's the thing. Legally, no. The U.S. flag, or technically, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's basically, yes, the U.S. flag is not allowed to be used as clothing. It's under Title IV, by the way, of the U.S. Code. If you wanted to go and take a look at all of the rules that are regards to it, the flag itself can't be used as as bedding. It can't be used to be on the ceiling. It's not supposed to be hung from the ceiling of or used as a ceiling covering. However, the way that they kind of get around the idea of like what I have, where the flag is, being represented, or that other shirt that I have that is nothing but the stars and stripes. The way they get around that is because technically that shirt is not the flag. It is a shirt that is colored like the flag. And so that's kind of the way they get around it. Also, the other thing is that while Title IV does exist in law, there's no punishment assigned to it. So somebody could go and say, okay, yeah, we're going to take you to court over the fact that you used your American flag as bedding, but there's no punishment assigned to it. And so because there's no punishment, there's basically no reason to go after anybody for it. So technically, no, the U.S. flag is not allowed to be used as clothing. And that answers that question. So this is a nice quick one. All right. So if you guys remember, I know I do, but if you guys remember about the 2020 Summer of Love, the 2020 riot season, let's say, well, Red State has this article where signs are starting to point toward another leftist-fueled summer of violence. Now, there's a photo here of the Chaz Chop area right here in my neck of the woods called Seattle, where they set up this autonomous zone in and around the East Precinct of the Seattle Police Department. And so anyway, that Summer of Love phrase was coined by former Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin. Yeah, that's why she ended up losing her job, I think. But there was a 19-year-old that got shot and killed. Multiple other shootings took place in that 7-block area. The police weren't, allowed to go in. There was a 24-year-old woman who got hit by a car. We had a whole bunch of calls to the Seattle PD for rapes, robberies, all sorts of other violent acts that were going on in the autonomous zone. So, yeah. And yet the mayor thought it was little more than a block party atmosphere, this thing says. Well, we're getting ready to go into the summertime. And the assistant professor of political science at Temple University, his name's Michael Sanses, he explained that a lot of that stuff that went on was to help shape the 2020 presidential election. And he said, weeks before the election, if voters are thinking about this in terms of racial injustice and nonviolent protests, that's politically pretty bad for the president because they really don't trust Trump on issues of race. However, this might be a potential worse time because of the fact that you have the left ramping up with the whole idea of Trump being Hitler and so on and so forth. So a report surfaced last month that is indicating that George Soros and other progressive Democrat donors have been funding the anti-Israel protests. We already knew that. And some are suggesting that those protests were detrimental to Biden. But the extremists on the left, they would assuredly vote Democrat. And those are the extremists. However, it's potentially going to get more and more violent as we get closer and closer to the election. So keep your eyes peeled here. So apparently in this X post in the article, you can see where you have a deranged leftist violently lunges at Team Trump volunteers outside a Kamala Harris event in Pennsylvania. This, let's see, this occurred on May 21st. So let's take a quick look at the video on that.
Take one and no one?
Why don't you try it?
No thank you, my girls. No thank you, my girls.
He'll be in jail by the time he gets the record. Thought you didn't like the police. Fuck you. Fuck you.
They're angry people. They are so angry people. They're angry.
You could go to jail.
They're angry people.
Oh,
Like
good.
her.
I'm sure they're in favor of you causing a bunch of homelessness.
Poor
They
thing.
have a release sign for you.
That's assaulting what you're doing.
Oh, so anyway, it's potentially going to get a little more violent, folks. It just is. And, of course, earlier, I didn't report on this, but earlier on Wednesday, there was a package with vials of blood that was shipped to the RNC headquarters being addressed to Donald Trump. So, and that was earlier this week. The RNC chairman, Michael Whatley, described the actions as a, quote, biological attack. Kind of makes you wonder if that's going to, that kind of stuff is going to happen. Now, keep in mind, this is, and again, this is only going to get worse as time goes on, especially as long as Trump keeps polling very well in the, in all of the polls and the swing states in particular. So yeah, just be ready. Keep your eyes peeled. I don't think it's going to get easier. It's definitely going to be a lot. I mean, even just the ramping up of the violence and violent rhetoric on X has kind of started, for this kind of thing, here in not just the Northwest, but in all kinds of Democrat cities. Hold on. Ooh, thought I was going to sneeze. But anyway, all kinds of Democrat cities and places where Democrat strongholds are, especially as we, as Trump supporters, get more and more vocal about what's going on. All right. So I've got one more story, or one more article to tell you about. And this one hits close to home and also is a proof positive that Democrats are, and judges, especially in enclaves such as Seattle, Washington, they are continuing their attack on law enforcement and support of the law. Now, there was a car crash nearby us, where an illegal immigrant was driving essentially on the wrong side of the road, and I called him an illegal immigrant. He's an illegal alien. Okay. He's a 33-year-old Mexican national who's been living in the U.S. illegally for more than a decade. And on March 2nd, he drove a vehicle that slammed into a parked patrol car with a young officer involved on southbound I-5, just south of me, in a town called Marysville, Washington. It's about 40 miles north of Seattle. The young trooper, Christopher Gadd, was 27. He's just a 2-year veteran of the Washington State Patrol. He was sitting in his police vehicle at the time of the crash, and he was announced dead at the scene. He's left behind a wife, Cameron Gadd, and a 2-year-old daughter. Well, this guy, Santana is his name, his last name, that's all I'm going to give him. He's had a series of traffic-related misdemeanor convictions, including driving with a suspended license. And in the hours following the crash, Santana admitted that he had smoked marijuana and consumed 2 beers the previous evening. Evidence also suggests that he was driving erratically and was actually speeding at about 112 miles per hour at the time of the incident. But here's what happened. The attorneys for Santana argued at his bail arraignment that the crash was a tragic accident that had occurred because the trooper was sitting in a vehicle with no lights on. Now, Santana was arrested and charged with vehicular homicide and vehicular assault. He was then booked into the county jail and assessed a bail of $1 million. Now, again, keep in mind, this is a guy who has been living here in the U.S. illegally for close to a decade. He has had other traffic-related offenses. He was driving at 112 miles per hour. Now, for those of you that don't know, we do have speed limits. A speed limit, now I'm guessing about where this took place was, let me think about this. Yeah, it would have been in an area that would have been a 60 mile an hour speed limit. Okay. And he crashed into a parked police car. So the police car wasn't even moving. Okay. But the attorneys were able to file motions to reduce their client's bail. And they argued that Santana has 3 children and steady employment as a mechanic. And then they also noted that he apparently has support of other family members who live elsewhere in the state, don't know where. And they're saying that his parents will welcome him back into his home, back into their home, and he is not a flight risk. Well, they talked about him being a longtime member of the community. They say that Washington State is undeniably his home, which is crap. He's an illegal alien. That's not his home. ICE apparently issued an immigration detainer for him, which Washington and Seattle don't participate in that kind of stuff. But they went ahead and got his bail lowered. Now, what I don't know, but they did successfully get his bail lowered down. Drastically reduced is what they call it. Folks, the left and any of these leftist You know, I don't argue that he has the opportunity of a good defense. I really don't. But the fact that he was driving as fast as he was, the fact that he's been here for 10 years illegally, the fact that he's done something, you know, within the same realm before, the fact that he admitted to being under the influence, even though here in Washington, you know, marijuana itself, recreational use of marijuana is legal. You're still not supposed to be under the influence when you drive. I don't care whether or not he has kids and whether or not he has a good job. That just doesn't matter anymore. It was what he did that night. And the fact that he is an illegal and could very well flee the country for killing this officer, he should have been booked at at least $1 million bail, because again, bail, all you have to do is come up with 10% of it. But this is the kind of thing that we have to look forward to should the Democrats stay in power. We've got to vote in 2024, and it's not just for the president. It's not just for the federal Senate. It's not just for the federal House of Representatives. It's all the way down the ballot. We have got to get rid of all remnants of Democrats in every stronghold, any place that you can. Vote out these people out. We need to get rid of them, all of them. They all need to go. Essentially, what we need to do is end the idea of a Democrat Party across the entire United States, at least from the standpoint of the one that exists today with all of the leftists in charge. This is just absolutely disgusting that this even happened. I'm hoping that he doesn't skip bail. Anyway, all right, I see I'm a little over my time. I do appreciate that. Do me a favor, if you are not a member of Rumble.com, please head on over to Rumble and sign up for an account. It's free. And follow the American Perspective channel. Hit that green follow button when you find it, and you'll be alerted when I go live. Also, if you're already signed in on Rumble, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and maybe leave a comment or two. Get some thumbs up there, because that's how Rumble helps to understand and rank videos like mine. Someday I'd like to end up on the leaderboard or the editor's pick page, one or the other. And we'll go ahead and end this here. I will see you tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.